interview when we're done and go talk to Thomas Grove and maybe ping Nicholas and see where we are, because it's time we got more information out there.
Okay, a short info for the community. This is the last chance for you to ask some questions. We have 10 minutes left and then it's time over. Okay, now we come to the next question from P. Kuya from the live chat. He asks if there will be a version control support even be available in the Unity 3 Indie.
We haven't made that decision for the 3.0 launch in particular. We'll continue to evaluate that. Again, this is part of the fine line we walk in terms of what do we consider pro features versus hobbyist, student, indie, dabbler, beginning developer features, and also what do we think makes for the right kind of selling points about why would somebody go pro. How would you justify spending that kind of money? So folks have to realize that no matter what feature splits we do, somebody's always going to feel left out, right? No matter what, here's a gold brick, somebody will complain they wanted a gold pony. So it's difficult. You can't please everybody. And so our decision as of today is that, when you look at what makes for an appropriate pro feature set, one of those things that you tend to be working in teams or at larger companies or with others off-site. And so it makes sense to us that source control solutions and the support for those would be a more pro-focused item. Will that change? Well, I mean, all of our pro and base product features, they're constantly shifting, right? They're going to continue to evolve, and hopefully the net result is that features trickle down. What was a pro feature 2 years ago may become an indie or free feature today. But for the coming launch, that's staying as a pro only feature. And, again, we think that's a good decision to go with.
Okay, a question from Mr. Ed. He asks if there are any thoughts on licensing and implementing more industry's top technology systems like Beast or deferred rendering in future releases of Unity. If so, any teasers on what could they be?
Well, will it happen again in the future? You bet. I mean, I think part of being a good tool company, like I think we are, I hope you agree, is that, we need to know the things that we do well, let's do those. There are things that maybe we don't do well, and let's not try and reinvent the wheel. We want to build in light mapping tools. It just did not make sense for us to go out and write our own from the ground up, compared to looking at the cost and quality that we would get out of licensing a industry, known off-the-shelf technology like Beast. So, will we do that in the future? Yeah, you bet. We've done it with, AGIA and PhysX. Well, I guess that's now NVIDIA PhysX. We've done that with Beast light mapping, Umbra occlusion culling. So we're going to keep going that route so that we focus our engineering efforts on those pieces that are really our domains of expertise. That's the core player and rendering and things like that. And then, use additional external technologies appropriately. The whole goal being that the cost to benefit ratio is as good as possible. And sometimes it's just better to go out and go license something because you get a much higher quality at a much lower cost. So yeah, we'll do it, but nothing to tip my hand about and say this is the next tech we might include. We've obviously discussed some, Scaleform or something around a vector-based solution is obviously a high-level candidate given the interest in the community. But who knows where we'll go.
Okay, now we come to the last questions. The question is, will it be possible to import native model formats without having the modeling program like Blend files without Blender installed?
Well, again, this falls in another one of this area, and I'm sorry if this seems like a little bit too generic of an answer. It's our goal to make things always as smooth and efficient as possible. And, yeah, there are some areas in our RDOSet pipeline that we, there's a couple of little burrs or rough edges that we might want to smooth out still. And, this is one of those areas where we just want model or art asset importing to just work. I mean, it needs to be you drop it in, you drag it and go. And anything that's a barrier between that simple ease of use goal of, plop and into scene, any intermediate steps, if we can find ways to remove those, yeah, we're looking at that. The real question is, of course, what other work is out there that we could be doing, and what gives us the most bang for the buck. You know, anytime we're doing a release like this, we have to look at all the features that folks want. And believe me, the list of everything is much larger than we have for 3.0. But you have to float some stuff up to the top and decide that this is what we're doing now because it's the most important. And so it's not that we don't think hard asset improvements like this are important. It's just we thought there was other work that was more compelling to do in the editor for this release. So yeah, you're going to see some improvements, and I just think it's one of those ongoing things. It's part of the core feature set of Unity, part of the core selling advantage of Unity, and so we're going to keep making tweaks and customizations along the way.
Okay, I think we come now to the last question about Unity, and the question is if you plan to make some contests for the community.
Well, you know, we've had a whole series of them. You know, there's been things like we started off at our first Unite conference by having what we called the Top Dog competition, and that was Top Developer of Online Games, DOG. And the goal there is we really wanted to kind of, you know, promote and push web player installs, and did that in conjunction with Shockwave.com, who sponsored it and actually had 4 of the 5 finalists published on their website like within a month or 2 afterwards. That worked out really well. Since then, we've had our yearly, you know, Unity Awards competition where folks can submit content for consideration. It's a bit less of a contest than it is an award ceremony because it's anything that you've created in the last year. So it's actually not about here's the start date and here's the end date, and you work within that window. It's about, hey, what do you have on the shelf that you've released that you really want to put out there so we see the best of the best. Apart from that, you know, we've done things like, you know, sponsor third-party contests, host some of our own kind of side stuff. So yeah, those are great ways to kind of, you know, keep people in the community making content. Quite frankly, they are an extremely inexpensive and cost-effective way to get marketing material that gets out there, because, you know, developers are very happy to put in their own work and get a little bit of the you know, notoriety and press and coverage, and it gives us great stuff to point to in terms of the creative work being done. So because it's so beneficial to both, you bet we're going to keep doing it. And, you know, folks out there, they have their own kind of community-based efforts. We are open to supporting those as well. You know, we need to kind of be sure that it's what you're asking for matches what we're going to get out of it. But you know, we're open to hosting our own as well as supporting third-party efforts. So they're just great ways to get people up, running, and working.
Okay. Sasha asks if you develop own games, and if yes, what games are that?
Well, you know, I've spent, as I said, my kind of software career working at tool vendors. So, you know, I've made some of my own like mini apps and whatnot. But, you know, like the things I've made are like an orbital motion simulator. My senior project in college was to write something that you could simulate the motion of any number of bodies and see what the orbits were like, elliptical or more strictly circular. And it was part of trying to back up a research project, which it failed to do. So it turned into me trying to defend the work that I'd done in it. And it was, you know, not visual. It was purely just dumping out tables of data. So, you know, I do things like that where I made it kind of a visual version that shows the, you know, inner planets of our solar system. But it's, you know, nothing fancy or anything on par with what, you know, you guys out in the community make. So I have all of 0 published games to my credit, and I will admit that to anyone that comes walking along. So, you know, when you take input from anyone out there about what you should do in the games industry, you have to think about where they're coming from and what their background is. And part of that for me is that I'm a tool vendor guy, right? And that's where my money comes from. That's where I put food on the table. It's not making games. So just like everyone else, that needs to be considered as part of my input. Just like when you go talk with the guy who's coming from a particular tech provider or a particular publisher, everybody's got an angle. And I try to stay as neutral as possible. I want to give you good information, not convince you wrongly about you know, decisions you should make. But sadly, no games. I do like participating in game jams and helping out and working on kind of some of my own little visualization stuff. But that's about the extent of it.
Okay, now the community, our chat guests, and our staff want to say thank you for the interview. If you now want to say something to the community, you can do that. And if not, I say bye-bye to everyone.
Yeah. Just my only parting words are, you know, really, I love this community. I talk about how nice of a group it is at every conference. We talk as a company often about it as how it's one of the best selling points of our product. And, you know, I know there's been a lot of change for folks in the last like year